Hi, this is Chloe Sears, and this is my alternative assignment for Module 8, in which we read the essay Emerson and James and watched the 4 supplemental videos. So I wanted to start off talking about transcendentalism. At first I was a little bit confused. I just didn't really grasp how it applied to the ideas that were presented later on within the essay, but then I was able to kind of come to the conclusion that it's, as it was presented within the essay, was this idea of a combination of rationalism and romanticism, and I was able to see how that applied to the different ideas, especially with that of pragmatic philosophy, this idea of, utilizing every single part of past philosophers' ideas and applying it to the most modern version of what we see, similar to what we see today, taking ideas from all different philosophers and applying it to different ideas. So I thought that was cool, really interesting ideas presented by Emerson especially. I also really liked Emerson's idea. Not really idea, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting, this idea of him saying that there's really no history, but biographies are the best way to, for people to understand past historical events. And I was kind of like, well, I would rather just read about the event. But reading on further, he talked about understanding the essence of the event or of a certain person within history. And so I thought that was interesting because a lot of the time I know I'm a very skim the surface type of person, at least when it comes to readings for school, is it's kind of just, well, I'm going to get the information out of it that I need, rather than trying to actually understand and figure out what the essence of that person as well as of that event was. So I know that, like, for me, talking about like something that is about a specific person rather than just the event or like the historical account allows for me to apply it to my own essence and kind of see how that individual person could have interpreted that specific event. So I thought that was interesting because it's just a reminder, at least for myself, is that to understand the importance of looking for essence rather than just what's on the surface of an event or of a person or of ideas presented by a person. So I thought that was interesting because it was kind of a grounding idea. Going along the lines of grounding ideas is definitely talking about karma. I'm a big believer in this idea of karma because I know that when I say something that's maybe stupid or rude or just hurtful to somebody, I definitely suffer the consequence of thinking about it later on, and I'm very much a person who will think about what I say later on, not really necessarily in the fact, which is not a good habit to have. This is kind of me, feeling something that I'm not necessarily so proud of in myself, something I'd like to work on. But I definitely think that this idea is true, is that even if you don't suffer physically or have that punishment, you definitely suffer emotionally and psychologically, because it's like you don't want to make another person feel bad, and once you do, and you're usually too proud, at least I am, to apologize for it. If it was just a small comment, which really wouldn't mean that much, it could be interpreted a different way, but I definitely am a culprit of thinking about it a lot afterwards, and it's this idea that I suffer even if I wasn't actually physically suffering. But I just think it's a really interesting idea because it's kind of the universe bouncing it back at ourselves, is that we're doing a lot of self-reflecting, and as we're self-reflecting, we're seeing the things that we don't necessarily want to self-reflect on, which is kind of what the last module was talking about, this idea of how self-reflection is so useful because it's putting you into this raw and emotional state. But anyway, I just thought it was really interesting because I really like the idea of karma, because I think it's important to learn that each interaction that you have is important, and that you shouldn't, at least for me, it's something to learn that it's worth it to apologize, even if it may not have hurt somebody in the way that you think it did. I thought that it was really interesting that the questions were posed by Dr. Provost within the essay, this idea of what gets the most of our energy and where does our passion take us. I think, oh my goodness, I'm very much the type of person that likes to say that I am very passionate about every single thing that I do. And I kind of live by that, is because I want to not take any second for granted, because each thing that I'm doing should have a purpose. And I think that for me, it's really easy to apply my passion to things that I'm doing, because my passion is translated very easily into an educational setting, because I'm really, really passionate about STEM and really passionate about this idea of getting to help other people, as well as communication, which is why I mentioned in my intro to myself is that I'm really interested in becoming a veterinarian. And I think that that's where a lot of my energy goes, is towards this idea that I'm working towards what's going to ultimately be my passion. So I think that it's it's really, I love getting to reflect on that, especially in a class, is getting to see that my passion is taking me towards something that's going to lead to even more passion. I just think that it's really interesting to see that last module's ideas about freedom is definitely a reminder that a risk of passion is not really a risk, but it's a necessary bit of discomfort for an eternal reward. I really, really believe that, because it's like taking the risk and taking it into your own hands is so worth it, because you're able to get this moment of discovering what your passion is. And I don't know, I just think it is, I related it to the idea presented within the Adam Smith video. It was a really minor part, but it was talking about how as people are specializing, they're wanting to reiterate their purpose. And I think that a lot of purpose comes from passion. And I think that the reason why is because you feel purpose when you're following what you're passionate about. So I don't know if this will help anybody, but definitely I recommend trying to live more towards your passion rather than what society says you need to live by. Because I know for me, I'm in the process of transferring, or hopefully going to be transferring to another university, which is definitely not what I had planned initially, and I kind of was embarrassed about it, because it's showing that I'm wasn't fully set on my idea when I started, and it's kind of having to retrace my steps. But I've kind of gotten to this point where it's like this, I'm self-reflecting and realize that it's just not even worth it to care what other people have to think. If it's what I want to do and it's where I think that my passion is going to be taking me, I should go for it. And that's why I really like the ideas presented by Emerson, because it's so applicable to at least my own life. It's kind of seeing that, like, I'm in this stage in my life where I have all the opportunity in the world to go pursue my passion, and it just, it's very humbling to think about. I'm being given this opportunity, and if I work hard, I'll get where I want to go. Definitely going through this course, like I said before, I've been going through a lot of self-reflection, and I just thinking back to high school is that there's so many things I did just because I thought other people would care that I did it, or that I just thought that if I didn't do that specific thing, I would, I would look stupid. And this course has just made me, realize that is just so unimportant. That, like, I don't know if that's necessarily that was what was being presented by Emerson, but it's just like, it's this idea that I know what's right for myself, and I'm allowing myself to be authentically me, and because of that, I've never felt more motivated. So it's really great to do that. I liked the little bit about friendships. I think that it's really interesting to see that the way that Emerson classified friendships was by sincerity, and I completely agree with it. Is that I know I have people who I'm friends with, not in the sense that, like, we're not sincere with one another. It's just that the sincerity is very far between, and it also can be one-sided, is that I know that I have friends who I'm super sincere with and I really care about, but just I don't get the same type of connection back. And so I think that's really interesting, because my question to Emerson would be, is that if you're sincere to another person, is that person your friend because you're being sincere to them, or does sincerity need to go both ways in order for it to be a friendship, or what type of thing? How would he classify that? I think that it's interesting also, because I definitely know that I'm sure everybody has the surface friends, the friends that you're friends with. It's like, oh, your Snapchat buddy who you just send a picture of your face to every day and don't actually have a conversation with and don't really know what's going on in their life, versus the people who you can, drop anything to be ready to spend time with. And so I think it's interesting that Emerson was able to make that distinction, and we're able to see that within philosophy. There's just a lot of things. This module was very applicable to my own life, so I really appreciated that. Another thing that was really presented within the essay was this idea of actions speak louder than words. By acting on passion and our authentic selves, we're bound to find ourselves. So I thought that was really interesting, because it's kind of this idea that as you're acting in your own interest, and as you're, doing what you do, by showing people that these are the steps you want to take towards doing something, you are being authentically yourself, and you are, showing that you're passionate about it and that you're willing to work towards it. And I just think that's great, because it's like, it's so important to show how hard you're willing to work for something, and that by speaking. And also, that's another thing, is I think that going back to that idea of karma, is that being able to acknowledge that you made a mistake is an action, and going and apologizing while it's using words, it's kind of going back, and rather than having to suffer emotionally, having that response, you're able to acknowledge that you did something wrong and go back and talk to the person that you may have wronged or said something stupid to, and just, I don't know, that idea that taking that action is so much more important than just saying that you're sorry, because it's very different. I know as an individual, like, I can say I'm sorry, or I can say that I'm really sorry, and it's very different is when I'm genuinely thought about what I said or what I did, and I'm able to apply my own essence and my sense of consciousness towards not wanting somebody else to suffer because of something that I said. So I think that that's really, really important. Let's see what else. I had an emotional response when they were talking about this idea of living in the moment, because I'm definitely a culprit of not living in the moment, because I'm very excited, if you haven't been able to tell, about what's coming up in my future and the possibility of getting to explore and develop my sense of passion, not my sense of passion, develop a greater understanding for my passion. And so it's really good to get to hear that, this idea of needing to, ground myself and realize that where I'm at right now is just as important as the end goal, is that each step that I'm taking, even just, being in this class and learning more about myself and my sense of consciousness is a step towards getting to develop my my educational and professional passion and my own type of consciousness and what's going on within my life. And I definitely think I had that emotional response because it's so wonderful to be able to sit here and acknowledge how meaningful each piece towards going to develop my passion is. So I really, really liked getting to reflect on that. I appreciated that. So now talking about James, the ideas of James, I was a little bit confused why he said reality is both subjective and objective. I was kind of like, I don't really understand it. But my best guess is kind of that it's based on the interpretation of both your own individual mind and your own individual experiences, as well as what's said by society, because reality, while it can be defined by science, I guess in a sense of consciousness, is more kind of this idea of the way that you live and the things that make up your own reality or sense of reality. I like James. I think that within like James's family, I think that debating and critical thinking is really, really important for young people, especially because so much of our educational system, at least in this point in time, is based off of these are the building blocks for how you need to be ready for an education, rather than, oh, maybe let's think critically about these ideas. I like to use the idea of the 5-paragraph essay, is that it is so static, is that you have these 5 things that you present. You have your thesis statement, you have your conclusion, introduction, where writing an essay can be completely, open to interpretation. By being able to critically think like that, you're able to develop even more as an individual. So I think that that's just really important, and I think it would be really interesting to see if they did put this into a school curriculum, what would it be like? And it just, it makes me wonder why it isn't taught more in younger bits of school, and why not teach this stuff when they're at a younger age, because it's just as important to learn it then that it is to learn it now. Because if I hadn't had to take this class, I never would have thought, done this type of self-reflecting, and it's just, I wouldn't say it's life-changing, but it's definitely been a crazy change, in the way that I think about things, and I'm able to acknowledge how far I've come in my own path. So I think that's really interesting. I also thought that this idea of like believing in something is half of the problem. So it's this idea that they had a quote that believing life is worth living, and belief will create the fact. I don't know if I said that completely correctly, but it's kind of this idea that by believing in what you're doing, that will create the fact that you're believing. It's like I believe that I can do this is allowing that to happen. Is that believing in yourself and the way that you talk to yourself is just as important as it is to actually take the steps towards going somewhere. So I'll use it I'll apply it to my own life, kind of this idea of wanting to go to a higher school. Is that, it's really daunting. It's super scary. But I'm able to see that I believe that I can do it. I believe that I can achieve and take those high STEM classes that are super difficult and get towards my goal. And that belief is allowing me to take the steps towards developing even more of my passion and going towards it. I think that it's really important to think of yourself as worthy as an individual. A lot of these ideas just were so great because it's allowing me to reflect on myself, and I love that. If you believe you're free, you will have more. You will move forward as a free individual, and it allows you to form questions to help form your idea of truth. So, believing is allowing you to form a better sense of truth. And the last idea that was presented within the essay that I want to talk about was that there was a quote within the essay by Dr. Provost. This idea that questions are the fountain of youth, and I going back to more of James's ideas about how questioning and believing is really important as an individual. I thought it was cool because it's kind of like, as a kid, you're stereotypically known